What's up, U.S. historians? Let's get going. We are on week 6, day 3 on the home stretch, and we're continuing with contemporary U.S. history. Today, we're going to talk more about George W. Bush. So, yesterday we spent talking about the 90s, and we did that by looking at the Clinton presidency. Today, we're going to take a look at his successor, George W. Bush, who, of course, is George H.W. Bush's son. So let's get going. And then when we get to 9/11, I know I've mentioned that before, but it was in my lifetime the single most significant development that's happened in terms of American history, certainly that kind of history. By the way, I did buzz the hair. I felt like it was time. Plus, I've got that thing to keep my face warm. With that, I'm going to X out and we're going to get going. By the late 90s, the U.S. was changing. The economic boom was slowing down. Remember, Clinton, um, one of his strengths was a strong economy. But the tech bubble, as they called it, and basically that was this uh, all of these new companies with super expensive stock prices that were arising as computer technology was becoming more available and more effective, et cetera. So all of that was about to pop. Party politics were also very hostile. I would say not as hostile as they are now, but certainly the impeachment, Clinton's impeachment, was kind of a testament to that. So the election of 2000 rolls around, and this was one of the closest elections in United States history. I don't know if you guys have heard the term "hanging Chad," but I heard that at least 5 billion times around 2000. Um, Republicans, George W. Bush, he served as the governor of Texas. The Democrats nominated Al Gore. Al Gore, remember, who was from Tennessee. He had been Clinton's VP for 2 terms, and then a guy named Ralph Nader, who ran as an independent. We don't talk a ton about third party candidates, but Nader was not a, if not a viable candidate, he was certainly visible and was a part of the dialogue. So it came down to whoever won Florida would have the electoral votes. So right here, Bush with 246, Gore with 249. Whoever wins this wins it all. But like I said, there were issues with tallying the votes. And the state Supreme Court orders a recount. The U.S. Supreme Court votes to stop the recount, and they declared George W. Bush the winner. In his first year, Bush worked with Congress to create a $1.35 trillion tax cut, and he reformed education through something called the No Child Left Behind Act. No Child Left Behind, really like any education policy, or like a lot of education policies, is highly controversial, but that was Bush's contribution to education was crafting and implementing the No Child Left Behind plan. Everything changed, and I can't overstate that. When on September 11th, 2001, Al Qaeda terrorists, that was their organization, hijacked four airplanes and flew two of them into the World Trade Center, one in the Pentagon. This is when we see the phrase war on terror or the war on terrorism pop up. I was in 10th grade at the time, and I remember they called us into the school chapel and told us, it said something like, students we're not sure of all the details, but we do know that a plane has been flown into the World Trade Center. And at the time, I thought, oh, that's too bad, a plane crash. And then as the day went out, played out, you realized that something really terrible was going on. So let's look. I found a news clip that was live that day. This is the Today Show, I think, with Matt Lauer, the since fired Matt Lauer. But let's check this out.
Okay, I have got to interrupt you right now.
Sorry.
Richard Hack, thank you very much. We appreciate the book is called Hughes. We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center, where I understand, do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment. First, this is Today on NBC.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft.
Now, by the entire ABC network. Good Morning America was in progress in the East Coast and the Midwest, but we're joined by the entire network just to show you some pictures at the foot of New York City. This is at the World Trade Center. Obviously, a major fire there, and there has been some sort of explosion. We don't fully know the details. There is one report, as of yet unconfirmed, that a plane has hit.
We have a breaking news story to tell you about. Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago, apparently. We have very little information.
15 minutes ago, there was a loud...
In the closer shot, you could see the flames there. Let's again, we're listening to see what this woman is saying here for a second.
It was inside.
Because it looked out, everything was coming out.
Everything
All
was
the windows were coming out, all the papers were
What is on
coming
the sidewalk?
out. I didn't see anything. I
Was there
ran,
any people hurt, do you know?
and everyone in the path train just ran. I don't know.
Wow, that's really something to watch. And then Bush gave a very solemn address to the nation that night. Let's watch a few minutes of that.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C.
Wow. That takes me right back. So let's keep going. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed or found that interesting. All right. So Osama bin Laden, we've since gone in and killed him um, under President Obama. There's that famous raid. But he was a rich guy. His dad was a tycoon, basically an ultra rich developer. He had 54 children. Did his dad? So Bin Laden had 53 siblings. Throughout the 80s, he fought against the Soviet troops in Afghanistan. Remember who was giving weapons to the rebels fighting against the Soviets in Afghanistan? The United States gave a lot of those guns. We won't go through the all of the developments. It's quite a story though. September 11th, hijackers crashed two jetliners into New York's World Trade Center and a third into the Pentagon. A fourth hijacked plane crashes in Pennsylvania, and he was named the chief suspect. So, some changes. They passed something called the Patriot Act, and they create the Department of Homeland Security. We decided to respond militarily. And then here's the layout of the raid that eventually killed bin Laden. Well, rats. It's okay. We're going to give this one more shot. If it doesn't work, then we'll move on with our lives. It's okay. In the world. There we go. Great. I found a short news clip about the SEAL raid.
New details are emerging about the U.S. raid on the luxury compound in Pakistan where Osama bin Laden was hiding. According to President Barack Obama's counterterrorism advisor, bin Laden lived in the heavily fortified compound for the past 5 to 6 years. Just released photos from the White House show the president and other senior officials in the White House Situation Room on Sunday as the group monitored the unfolding operation on a video screen. The mood in the room during the 40-minute operation was described as tense and anxiety-ridden as Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Defense Secretary Robert Gates watched more than 24 Navy SEALs engage in a firefight. Upon hearing the news that bin Laden was killed, President Obama is said to have told his national security team, "We got him, guys." According to the White House, Navy SEALs snatched computer drives and disks from bin Laden's compound, yielding what a U.S. official told Reuters was a treasure trove of intelligence.
Wow. All right. Certainly it wasn't that simple, but we simply don't have enough time to go over all of the ins and outs in Afghanistan. So let's keep cruising. Let's turn our sights on another enemy. A man named Saddam Hussein. WMDs, that's another buzzword or term that you heard a lot about during that era. That meant weapons of mass destruction. And the existence of WMDs in Iraq was used as justification for us taking military action in that part of the world. It turns out that he did not have a stockpile of weapons of mass destruction, but that was the thought at the time, and at least those were the pretenses that we invaded with. So let's take a look at. Well, I paused myself, and I'm not sure where I started back talking. I just went to turn off the recorder and realized that it was off. So, pardon me if you've already heard some of this. If you have already heard it, then you don't need to listen to it again. But excuse me. We're going to check out this clip of Bush declaring war, and I hope, hopefully, I haven't already shown this. I'm going to post this, post a link to this on your class page as well.
10 years ago, on March 19th, 2003, President Bush announced the
So
start
if you
of
want to just
military
watch it
action
there,
in
feel free to
Iraq,
do that.
Operation Iraqi Freedom. Up next, his 5-minute address from the Oval Office.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense. To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you. That trust is well placed. The enemies you confront will come to know your skill and bravery. The people you liberate will witness the honorable and decent spirit of the American military. In this conflict, America faces an enemy who has no regard for conventions of war or rules of morality. Saddam Hussein has placed Iraqi troops and equipment in civilian areas, attempting to use innocent men, women, and children as shields for his own military, a final atrocity against his people. I want Americans and all the world to know that coalition forces will make every effort to spare innocent civilians from harm. The campaign on the harsh terrain of a nation as large as California could be longer and more difficult than some predict. And helping Iraqis achieve.
He was right. It was longer. It was a lot longer. Again, I hope you didn't just hear me say this, but still going on to an extent. And eventually we do take out Saddam Hussein. So, of course, we could talk much, much more about the Iraq War, the war on terror in general, and any number of other major triumphs or crises going on during the early 2000s. But we got to keep cruising because there's not a whole lot of school year left. And we've made it to the Georgia state standard for United States history that says, describe the historic nature of the 2008 presidential election. I would say it was historic indeed, because as you guys know, hopefully, in 2008, the United States elected our first black president, Barack Hussein Obama. When we started the class this semester, the only black people in the United States came over on slave ships. And then after the result of a war, slavery ends, and then black people have to continue to scratch and claw for a political voice, for decades thereafter. In 2008, while it doesn't mark, victory over racial inequality. You can't say, well, good, I'm glad we got that taken care of. Now that's not a problem, but it was a big, big moment in American history. And I just don't really think anybody would try to deny that. So we'll talk more about former President Obama tomorrow. But again, that's another moment that I remember quite well. And anyway. Okay, guys. So you do not have a homework assignment for today. So I posted a clip, a link to Bush's September 11th video. And then I'm going to post this lesson right here. So good job. Be nice to your siblings. Don't drive your parents nuts. And I will talk to you tomorrow.